I've been practicing law now 33 years, the last 30 in Mahoning County, the last 24 of those years as a criminal defense attorney. I want to loop into what Judge DeSalvo said when she started out about judging. It's easy to see me on the evening news or another defense attorney standing next to someone and say, how could they stand next to that person? And for purposes of this forum, I could tell you about my first client charged with prostitution who was sobbing in the county jail that she needed to get out because she was pregnant and she needed to have an abortion because if she had a child, he was going to kill her. And she was desperate to get out of our county jail for that reason only. She was a heroin addict and she was being prostituted. And I talked to the prosecutor, talked to the police. The judge wanted to keep her in jail because she was concerned about the heroin addiction. But she ultimately agreed to let her out to seek medical attention, one, to see if she had a viable pregnancy because she'd been a heroin addict. In less than a month's time, she was found dead on the side of the street. I could tell you about the client who was 17 years old, who was living in one of our suburbs as a very smart, ambitious young girl with a 3.8 GPA, was going to go to college, and then out of the blue started taking checks from her mom's checkbook and started stealing jewelry from her mom's jewelry box. And everybody thought this was really odd. She was the perfect little girl. And then she started coming home later and looking like she was strung out. And her parents didn't know what to do. She'd always been quiet. She wasn't a popular one. They found out that she had been at a party and a young man who knew how to groom young women put drugs in her drink without letting her know. It wasn't a conscious choice to get addicted. She didn't want to party and see what it was like. He put drugs in her drink at a bonfire. She became addicted rapidly. He got pictures of her when she was nude, and he used those pictures of her when she was high and nude to extort her. So she started stealing from mom to feed her drug habit, to get money for him. I could tell you about how one of my colleagues chased her across the parking lot of a local retail establishment, trying to keep her from getting back in his vehicle because she needed her next fix. It's in our backyards. It's in our hometowns. It is everywhere we turn. And becoming educated about it, asking how we got here, is critically important. Our criminal justice system has three major purposes: punish offenders, protect the public, reduce crime. This issue of human trafficking is uniquely geared towards bringing awareness to it. Will achieve all three of those purposes. When we ask, why is this person standing next to that attorney in the courtroom, we garner greater awareness to what brought them in the courtroom in the first place. For some of them, it was never a conscious choice to become addicted to drugs. That gentleman I told you about, when Judge DeSalvo and I were doing training for Youngstown Police Department on human trafficking, the one officer said, I know exactly who you're talking about, and we connected him to at least 14 young girls that he did that to. And then he would bring them into the city of Youngstown to get their drugs, and then go back out to the suburbs to party with them, and to take pictures, and to pimp them out. So we can't always assume that this is a voluntary choice. And let me be very clear, Ohio law is clear. There's a distinction between prostitution and human trafficking. If someone voluntarily chooses to sell themselves, man or woman, money for sex, that is not human trafficking. Human trafficking is force, fraud, and coercion. Someone else is controlling the money, someone else is controlling the food, someone else is controlling where you live, where you go, who you get to see, how much you charge. More often than not, they get nothing from their own money because everything else is controlled for them. That's human trafficking. Prostitution is you decide to exchange money or something else for sex. Two different things. If it is a juvenile, Ohio law is very clear, you do not need force, fraud, or coercion if they're under 18. And I will tell you, as someone who's been doing this for 24 years, the single biggest area where I see sex offenses dramatically increasing is in our juvenile court system. Dramatic increases. 3 weeks ago when I walked in, the prosecutor said to me, 7 new cases in the past 5 days. This isn't legal advice. If your child, and I say child, has an iPhone and you aren't looking at it every day, you're not parenting. If your child has an iPhone and they think it's private because it's theirs, and you aren't trying to figure out why they're so concerned about it being private, you're failing your child. The internet is a cesspool of information and access that is taking our young kids in and corrupting them. They are getting access to people they think are their friends who lure them in to trust them and then abuse them. Over and over and over again, we see it. I had to, at one point in time, when I was going through my daughter's phone and she was preaching to me about the Constitution and all the things I talk about all the time, explain to her that the Constitution applies to the government, not your parents. There is a new book out about the generation of anxiety or anxiety generation that talks about the direct link between the use of electronics, iPads, iPhones, and computers to what our young children are going through in today's society. We have an obligation to protect them. I could tell you about the young 14-year-old girl who started being raped by her grandfather when she was 5 years old, who by 10 years old ran away and was running the streets. I got appointed to represent her in juvenile court. And every resource we tried wasn't working. At least once a week, we were all driving around looking for her because she kept running away and going back to the streets, because she viewed the streets as more of a family than her own family was to her. So, human trafficking knows no community. I mean, there's no boundaries for it. All ages, all races, all genders. We need to bring greater awareness to this. You're the eyes and ears in the community. When you see a neighbor child or adult that starts acting weird, that starts acting out, you're the ones who should be wondering why and not labeling that person as just the juvenile delinquent that's getting in trouble again. There are some of those. There really are, that just good environment, good upbringing, and they go off the tracks. But there are many more that there is a cause and effect between the abuse in the home and the acting out, the running away. So we have these statutes for prosecuting individuals that engage in prostitution, that post pictures of themselves. I've had multiple juvenile clients that were charged with distributing child pornography because they take pictures of themselves and distribute it. Nobody's looking at their phone to see what pictures are on there, who they're sending things to, who they're communicating with. That needs to be occurring. The whole sexting thing, taking pictures and disseminating them, is very popular in our high schools. They all seem to do it because they think whoever is going to like them, or it's going to make them popular. The case that Bill Cranston put up there with the 100 victims in our community, you can't tell me neighbors in that community didn't see over 90 people, young girls, coming and going all hours of the day and night. No one noticed that volume of people coming and going, young girls. when we did the training at YPD, several of the police officers said, we pulled him over at 1 o'clock in the morning with young girls in his car. We never thought anything of it. He gave them excuses for who it was and why they were out. We didn't know what to look for, so we didn't know what to ask. These types of forums and the training we've been doing all day are to bring awareness to what we all need to be alert to and all need to be looking for. So, I know we're already behind schedule, Judge. When I tell you it's in every community, every race, every gender, every socioeconomic group that we know, I mean it. So, we all need to, in our community, be more vigilant, be more aware, look for those signs that you heard early on about tattooing, changes in behavior, not having identification, not making eye contact, being evasive. I don't care if they're 13 or they're 25. If you see those things, those should be red flags. And we should all, in our obligation to each other on this planet, ask the next question. Is everything okay? Do you need something? How did you get here? Only then can we truly reduce crime, punish offenders, and help those who truly need help.